Let's get more on that report by MPs, which claims that voters are being manipulated by so-called fake news on social media. An inquiry by the Digital Culture, Media and Sport Select Committee described it as a crisis in our democracy. I'm joined from Athens by Dr. Ashley Frawley, a senior lecturer in sociology and social policy at the University of Swansea. Ashley, good to see you. What do you make of this report? A crisis in our democracy? Is that your assessment?
I find it interesting that it's framed in terms of democracy. I actually don't think that the political class is all that concerned about democracy. I mean, they set up a nudge unit, which was dedicated towards subtly sort of coercing people into making decisions that their betters had more or less decided were good for them. I think everybody is sort of falling all over themselves to manipulate people. I think what's different is that there's a multiplicity of sources now, and I think what the government is worried about is that they've got competitors.
Well, that's a point to make, although I suppose a counterpoint to make to that is that these select committees are separate from government and they tend to be rather bolshier and have different interests than government itself. But surely the idea, as advanced by the Culture, Media, Sport Select Committee, that, you know, the platforms that are pushing this stuff out or permitting it to be pushed out, that they should take greater responsibility. I mean, that's a good point to make.
Certainly, I would like to see, you know, when you see an advertisement on Facebook or a post on Facebook, sure, you would like a little bit more information about where it came from. But I don't think that that's the reason why we're hearing so much about fake news. I think that it really reflects a sense amongst certain people, you know, members of the polity or the political class, a certain low view that they tend to have of the electorate. I don't think anyone's really interested in convincing people of the veracity of their ideas or the goodness of their visions for the future. I think it's the panic about fake news has really become a way for certain groups in society to forgive themselves for their own failures, or as a way of you know, not looking very closely at themselves and asking, you know, why did I fail to galvanize the electorate? Why did my arguments fail to convince people? Well, you know, they were just manipulated by a bunch of people in Macedonia or Russia.
Well, just on that point, I was having a debate, I suppose you could call it an argument, on Twitter of all places a little bit earlier today about the fact that, you know, from my point of view, from this seat behind this news desk, it does sometimes seem that people are far less critical, that there's not an application of critical thinking to the media that we are consuming. I mean, would you say it that way?
I'm not sure that that's true. I mean, I think that, I mean, we've all seen people post things on Facebook that are just ridiculous. But you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all of the people all the time. I mean, you know, these posts tend to be swarmed by people saying, you know, this doesn't seem right. Someone posts a Snopes link, that sort of thing.
I mean, but remember, you know, it does matter when, you know, you have a referendum on membership or leaving the European Union that's separated by only a few 100,000 votes. At times like that, you don't need to fool all of the people, but if you fool a few 100,000 of them, either way, you can swing referendum results.
I really don't think that you can explain something as big as a referendum or Donald Trump's victory, which is another one that gets blamed on this, in terms of people being duped on Facebook. And I think that the more that we do, it's really shocking, because after these events, there was a lot of soul searching initially that said, you know, what did we do? Where did our arguments fail? Maybe we need to think about it. And then it was sort of, no, actually, everybody was just, you know, duped on Facebook, and that's what happened. No need to rethink anything. Let's just keep doing the same thing. And I think as long as we keep doing that, we're going to see a lot more upsets, and there's really a need to think more deeply about things. And actually, I think that a lot more damaging and dangerous to democracy than fake news is the tendency to use so-called science, gaming the numbers, statistics, and so on to shut down political debates, as though all the big questions have been answered. Science will tell us the way, and this is how we should, you know, relate to our children, and this is how we should run the economy, and all the big questions are foreclosed. And I think, first of all, that turns off the electorate, and second of all, some of those questions, in fact, perhaps most of those questions, cannot be simply decided by laboratory tests. They have to be debated. And I think that the more that we talk about critical thinking as though it's something that needs to be taught in schools, the more we think about critical thinking as fact-checking, the more we're going to see that ingrained, where people will search more for the answers in science instead of debating things. And I think there needs to be more robust debate. If something is false, you need to be able to argue why it's false, not simply say, oh, you people are fools. Well, you know, you need to be able to speak to everybody. You need to be able to convince people, and I'm seeing that that's really lacking.
I have to say, a world with more robust debate is a world that I would like to live in. Dr. Ashley Frawley, I'm afraid we'll have to leave our conversation there, but thanks very much for joining us.